World Juniors, the U.S. won last night. They won in overtime over Finland. It was great because we saw two Dallas Stars prospects go head-to-head, which was really exciting. I thought Hemming really was noticeable for the Finns. Sean, you're actually, I know this is weird for us. Yeah. You're the pronunciation expert on the other one. It's Minitian?
Aaron Minitin. Aaron
okay.
It's not.
Yeah, he's the pro.
Yeah, it's not Minitian, which is, I actually said that once incorrectly, and then it is not that one. The T, it's a harder T.
Nice. Well, look, great for the U.S. I was thrilled. I was a little bummed that they went to 3-on-3 overtime for the gold medal game, because just like in the NHL playoffs where they don't do 3-on-3 or shootouts, I just think that playing hockey the way that the game is played when it comes to winning a championship, I'm fine with them doing 3-on-3 in the knockout phase before the final, right? It's a lot of games for these kids in a short period of time. But I would have, and it doesn't have to be played until you drop 5 overtimes, but maybe 1 20-minute 5-on-5 and then go to 3-on-3 or something.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like it. I would rather see it. I mean, again, if you're going to, because it's different, obviously, in all the other games as far as, how they're running the 3-on-3 stuff. I get it, but in the championship game, I think it's got to be 5-on-5. That's what I think. But, and the other thing is, guys, I didn't pay attention. I'm sure you guys all paid attention more. Are they trotting out the same 6 or 7 or 8 guys for 3-on-3, or are they running deep through the lineup? Anybody pay attention?
So that's actually, yes and no. So it's for the first, I don't remember how long into the game it was, but there's a couple guys who stayed out there pretty much. Basically, the United States just rotated 2 defensemen the entire time. Zeev Buium and Cole Hudson just basically rotated the 2 defensemen the entire time. But Teddy Stiga, who scored the game-winning goal on a breakaway, he wasn't in the first 4 or 5 shifts of overtime. He was a depth player. Teddy Stiga is actually a guy who the U.S. scratched in the first game of group play, and then he went from healthy scratch to scoring in his first goal of the tournament. The last goal of the tournament is the gold medal winning goal. So for the Americans, there was a little bit more rotation, and in the end it paid off. There was a guy with the fresh legs who had been a depth player, gets deep for the goal on for really nice feet. The Finns had a little bit more of top 6 heavy, and it was about a group of 4 or 5 different forwards that just kept rotating through. So it does. So from one perspective, one of the reasons that I love 5-on-5 is it shows true team depth as opposed to 3-on-3. But at least from a United States perspective, and we can celebrate it right now because we're all Americans celebrating on this show right now, you kind of won because of your depth, because you trusted the guy who was a little bit fresher to get out there and scored on a breakaway, and that's how you lifted the trophy at the end.
See, and I thought as the regular game was moving down the road, especially halfway through the second, maybe a little later, the Finns seemed to be wearing down a little bit, and U.S. kind of took over. Maybe it was more towards the end of the second, but I just felt like they were just rolling guys over, and they were kind of wearing them down, and that's kind of why I think I like the 5-on-5. In the just because you can do that, and I actually found it's not funny. I'm happy for the kid, but like the kid that scores the OT goal, next thing you know, he's the player of the game. I don't even know. I don't even know if he played 7 minutes in the whole game, but he's the player of the game.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's funny how that played out too, because the Finns won their semifinal in overtime. They had a dogged back and forth overtime and everything like that, and the United States had a tough overtime game, tough semifinal as well, but it wasn't nearly as tough. It wasn't an overtime game, and those games are played back to back, and so there is a little bit of that collateral damage and the wear and tear for the United States, where you think about Finland being a little bit more tired. You think about how they started out, and they jumped out to the way that game started in the first period, where there was always going to be a natural spot for the United States to kind of maybe push back. And credit to the U.S. for keep running things and rolling things. And I mean, it was another game for me where I think one of the reasons David Carl is obviously David Carl's resume is so impressive, but one of the reasons David Carl is this coach that people see as a future NHL coach, and he probably will be whenever the right job for him pops up, is he trusts his depth and even does it at Denver. Like at Denver, they play a very deep game that rolls all four lines. They attack and everything like that. It's not overly reliant on one thing. Even the way the United States was run this tournament, where because for World Junior you get to extra dress an extra body, and so you effectively have a 13th forward. And so instead of bringing a 13th forward who wasn't going to play, the United States basically used Cole Iserman as the 13th forward, and Cole Iserman didn't play much at 5-on-5, didn't even have really a line at 5-on-5, but he's got probably one of the best shots from last year's draft, and he scored 3 or 4 power play goals. And I thought the United States did a really good job of maximizing the depth, not just in usage, but also in deployment and how things played out. And that's why they've won back-to-back gold medals at this, and it was a really well-done coaching job there, too.
It feels like, Sean, I was just going to say, it also feels like could be the case with the Four Nations coming up, right? It's what makes it so hard for a lot of times Sweden and Finland, specifically in this tournament, to compete with the U.S. and Canada. You look at, like, I want to say U.S. versus Canada in the final of that Four Nations, but then you look at the games they play and how they do that tournament, and it's a little different with Four Nations. They don't have to play the quarterfinal, semifinal, all the way up. They just go right to the championship. But it feels like depth is so important. Depth and goaltending is so important in these tournaments, especially now with how much speed and non-physicality that's in this tournament now.
Yeah, and well, with Four Nations too, it's going to be the big, like you talk about depth, right? And this is nothing against like what Miro and Esa are going to bring to the Finnish defense, but Jani Hakanpää is on the roster for Team Finland, and we all know what his health is and stuff like that. When you're talking about Jani Hakanpää being in your defense in a best-on-best tournament like this, and I know he might not play, his career is probably over from what someone told me in Toronto, but that's much different than when you're looking at the depth for the United States and you're going to and you got Fox and Hughes and then and just everything backing up there. So it's not. But it's also a credit to, let's give credit where it's due here to the Finns, because it is a country, and we've talked a lot about them because obviously the Stars went there and there's the ties and with Jiri Lehtinen and everything like that. But it's a country with less population. I've said it before on the show. Finland has less population than DFW. And if I told you, if I give you that's not just hockey players, just all humans, they have less humans than DFW. So with what Finland's doing, it's like taking the population of DFW and saying, let's put together a hockey team that can compete with all of Canada. And that's why it's always impressive to me with how Finland fares in these international tournaments.
And the comparison might actually be, for the sake of DFW, if you took all of the football players from the Metroplex and you made an NFL team and had them compete against the Kansas City Chiefs or whatever, that would be sort of the equivalent, or, the Pro Bowl of anybody else from the rest of the United States.
I mean, our Cowboys show could probably go and figure out that probably would be a pretty good team. I don't know. I'm
It
just guessing.
probably would be.
It probably would be a pretty good team.